this stuff up for us. And what I have here is one of the tie downs for my boats, just a piece of elastic with a hook at both ends, and two almost full paint cans. So Hooke's law states that if you have something that's elastic, if it obeys Hooke's law, when you apply a force to it, it's going to stretch until the force you've applied is equal to the amount of force the elastic can apply. So I'm going to take a paint can and add it to it. And what's going to happen is the elastic is going to stretch until equilibrium is established. And equilibrium is established when the weight of the paint can is balanced by the upward force from the elastic. So what we should expect is that if I put two paint cans on there, they should stretch twice as far. Now, this is a little bit anecdotal because paint cans aren't full, they're nearly full. But we can get a little bit of measurement here. So, place the tape measure here. There we go. So, without the paint can, you are somewhere around 18, it looks like. Place the paint can on it, and we stretch from 18 down here to about 9. So I'm kind of expecting that when I put the second paint can on there, it's going to stretch it all the way down. In the end, it's going to double about how far the elastic is stretched. There we go. So Hooke's law looks like this thing obeys Hooke's law because when I doubled the weight, I doubled the amount that was stretched. But that's not all that Hooke's law tells us. Hooke's law is also related to the way in which the system will oscillate. Now, oscillations occur because when we extend a system outside of its equilibrium, the elastic's going to pull upwards with more force than the weight is pulling downwards. So if I displace the system downwards, I will set the system into oscillations. So let's get on down here so you can see all this. The oscillations don't last very long because, well, the elastic is designed to try and make sure there aren't oscillations. So it's dampening the oscillation. But they exist for a little while. Now, there are lots of systems where we don't want oscillations, but we still want the springiness of the system. Something like the shocks and the springs in your car, they're designed to let the wheels move, but the car body shouldn't move very much, so you have a smooth ride inside the car. But we don't want the car to continue to bounce after you hit a pothole or a bump in the road, so there's something there to absorb the bouncing and slow it down, maybe even eliminate it. That's what's happening here. This piece of elastic is designed to absorb these shocks and to slow down the oscillations. But I want to drive them a little bit, because what I want you to notice is that the oscillations are regular. They occur in a regular way. In fact, I'm going to plot this in a minute so we can take a look at it. So just going to let it bounce a little bit. We'll come back to that one. I want you to compare that with what happens when I take one of the cans off and we bounce this one. You should see that there's definitely a difference in the rate of the oscillation. Call that the frequency of the oscillation. Now, I'm hoping that those of you who are paying attention realize there's probably a good reason why the rate of the oscillation is different when there's two cans as opposed to one. Can anybody think about this and consider inertia and tell me why it might oscillate slower when there's two cans as opposed to one? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Hot out today. 92 degrees right now in the sun. But this is what we do for our students. Alright, well, I'm going to expect the answer to this question.
So, using some motion tracking software, what we're going to do is we're going to try and see if we can track the motion of one of the paint cans from the video. Now, it took me several tries to get it to work out just right and be able to get the entire motion of the paint can. You'll notice that I definitely was having to sit there and kind of still add energy to the system. But eventually I was able to get the tracking software to track the paint can for probably 4 or 5 seconds. So when you look at the graph that's plotted, it should be clear that what we get here is kind of a sinusoidal wave function, a function that describes the motion of the paint can as it moves up and down in the system. So if you watch what's going to happen here, we're going to pluck the string again, but we're doing this in slow motion so that you can clearly see the movement of the string back and forth. In this circumstance, just like in the circumstance with the paint cans, the string acts as the object that's oscillating, and the tension in the string from the points where it's connected, they provide the restoring force, the force that's going to try and bring the string back to equilibrium. Now, when you pluck the string, it's trying to get back to equilibrium, but once it starts moving, it passes equilibrium. Now here I've got a saw blade, and I'm going to just clamp it down to a countertop. It's the same idea. The saw blade itself is relatively rigid, so that when I displace it a small amount, there's a force on the saw blade that's going to try and return it back to its equilibrium position. But once you set it into motion, it's going to want to stay in motion the whole time. So even though I'm displacing it, I'm trying to clamp it down tight here, even though I'm displacing it, it's going to continue to oscillate for a long period of time because of the restoring force. Here it is in slow motion. Now that's truthfully happening about 60, 70 times a second. But with it slowed down, you can see how it's attempting to get back to that standard central place, that equilibrium position where it's supposed to be. So when I go in there and attempt to try and displace it, there is a force called the restoring force that's trying to push it back to where it started. All simple harmonic motion is a kind of an interaction between the inertia of the object and the attempt of a restoring force to put it back to equilibrium. This is what we're going to talk about in class today.